Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar, Is Your Pricing Strategy Truly Optimized? I'd now like to take a moment to introduce your speaker for today, Puneet Mahindroo. In a career spanning 20 years in the hospitality industry, Puneet has worked in various hotel and corporate level roles in marketing, revenue management, and distribution. Puneet has been responsible for implementation of several strategic projects ranging from performance marketing, new hotel and restaurant openings, sales systems, automated revenue management system, revenue management education, pricing reforms, and implementation of distribution platforms. Puneet has also served in various industry-wide initiatives. He served as the Asia Pacific Chair to the HFTP Revenue Management Advisory Board and has successfully completed 2 terms as the Asia Pacific Chair on the Board of Directors of the Hotel Electronic Distribution Networking Association. He has also served as a member of the leading hotels of the World International Rooms Revenue Management and Distribution Advisory Board. He's also passionate about education and training and has been the external visiting faculty of revenue management, including business schools such as an Indian Institution of Management, Ahmedabad, SP Jain in Dubai, and also involved with the Cornell in US and SIT on projects and roundtables. In the past 3 years, Puneet has made investments in several successful restaurant and bar projects that have established themselves among the most successful brands. For his professional achievements, he's been awarded Leading Hotels of the World Rising Star Award and Tata Group's Business Excellence Award. He's also regarded an industry leader and has been a keynote speaker at various industry events and conferences such as Travel Distribution Summit Web and Travel, Digital Marketing Summit, HSMAI Revenue Optimization Conference, and many others. So Puneet, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Carly, and greetings to everyone from different parts of the world who are joining into the webinar. So in today's webinar, we jump straight into some of the discussion points. We're going to talk a little bit about the process of selling and how it connects to the various influences of demand, and then move into evolution of pricing, defining optimal pricing, and then take a look at the value of econometrics and technology as an enabler, and take a look at a use case of a couple of hotels. The art of matching product with the benefits with the consumer needs is really what selling is all about. And if you take a look at the overall entrepreneurship world, and I draw a lot of examples from entrepreneurship world since I'm an entrepreneur myself, and we go through the whole deep process, 17-step process of market assessment and surveys and research before we step into any business. 42% of the entrepreneurs actually identify their market through psychographic variables, which is attitudes, beliefs, and emotions. But if you take a notice, this graph has actually moved more towards the right, where 58% of the entrepreneurs now identify their markets through more behavior variables, which is readiness to purchase, attitudes, and loyalty. And in hospitality world, more and more entrepreneurs or people who are launching new products in the market tend to move more towards 58%. And we're not surprised, because if you take a look at the overall segmentation of your market, by whether it's geographic, behavioral, psychographic, or demographic, while not to undermine the role of geographic, demographic, and psychographic, ultimately it drives consumer behavior. And an understanding of consumer behavior is what drives hardcore pricing tactics. I draw a good example from bases like Amazon, and then in Asia we've got a company called Lazada, which is owned by Alibaba Group. And when you take a look at the 2 companies, they've got a pretty much similar pricing model, and they optimize pricing based on more behavioral characteristics. That means the frequency of purchase, the kind of purchase, and that's why when you go on to Amazon.com for the type of products you generally buy, you're made those recommendations, you're given SOPs to really lure you to buy some of those items at still profitable value, and that's where the world is really moving towards. So at this stage, let's take our first poll before we jump right into pricing. What is your greatest pricing challenge? And you'll have the poll questions coming up.
All right, so it looks like the results for the poll are in, and it looks like 100% everyone is saying demand forecasting is the greatest challenge.
And I'm not actually surprised to see that, because in most of the presentations that I do around the world, one of the key factors that always comes up is demand forecasting is one of the greatest challenge towards price optimization. And before we get into addressing some of the challenges around pricing, one of the things one needs to keep in mind is that the worst thing is not knowing what your customers are doing, is knowing and not immediately taking optimal actions to reinforce those. When some of you say that we are unable to demand forecast, or that is one of the biggest challenges, that's exactly where it stems from, for the simple reason that strategies are often overtaken by events. The world is changing faster than ever, and some of the events are natural events that could have a huge impact on demand. For example, the volcanic activity in Bali has impacted the results in the last 3 years, and they need to react to some of these changes very quickly. And this is something you can't forecast for. There are incidences which happen with airlines and flights, political instability like we're seeing in Hong Kong and several other parts of the world at the moment taking place. That has a huge impact on demand and completely unexpected. Economies, different economies of the world have a huge impact on business travel and travel in general, whether it's the US-China blockade that's going on, or the issue between UK and EU at the moment, or elections in certain parts of the world. What is also a phenomenal influencer is how channels have become multicultural, multilingual, and continue to evolve as new channels are introduced. We've seen in the last 10 years the emergence of certain regional channels. For example, some of you who deal with the Chinese market, it's a very different kind of a channel network with Ctrip and WeChat and some of those innovations that have taken in that part of the world. Likewise, if we keep moving further and think about it, how meta search and the world of TripAdvisor has impacted search behavior. 70% of the travel searches today take place on TripAdvisor and not actually on Google, and that's a huge departure from what it used to be. It's also about speed and how fast you can get to market. Research shows that 80% of the search queries or conversions are lost actually in less than 10 seconds. Expedia recently published a phenomenal report about leisure, and that's again a phenomena that we see all around. And to be honest, in my daily life, I see that with my friends and my colleagues who travel to different locations and try and combine business and leisure together. And now here is the dilemma: that how do you price for such customers? Because one part of their stay, they may book on their business travel per diems, and the second part is more price sensitive, which is more to do with leisure. And how do you kind of adapt to this dual segmentation of the same demographic? Also, in terms of reviews and the overall funnel of the booking process, that has changed phenomenally. A lot of people, according to Google, start dreaming about travel 6 months out before they're starting to travel, and that also has a huge impact on pricing, because someone 6 months out is looking at their pricing window in the future and trying to do their research and trying to find which is the most valuable deal for them. And then ultimately, 2 months out or 3 months out, they may just end up making a booking and then again go through a similar process, but a much shorter and quicker research. Transparency. Pricing is far more transparent than it has ever been. And aspects like Google Hotel Finder are bringing pricing across different platforms under one single search window, making it very, very easy for the consumers. So overall, there are a huge amount of influencers to demand and demand forecasting, and thereby ability to optimize price and pricing strategies for the hotel industry. On one hand, there are a lot of influences to demand that has continuously evolved over the last 10 years. At the same time, so has pricing evolved over the last 20 years. If we take a look way back 20 years ago, pricing used to be very tactical. It used to be rates that varied by seasonality, and some measurements and some demand forecasting used to exist. And then gradually the industry navigated itself towards a more yield-oriented approach and demand forecast approach, whereby the focus became more RevPAR-oriented as to what price, what occupancy, and how do we drive the maximum RevPAR for the business. And then somewhere around 7 or 8 years ago, a lot of hotel companies started migrating towards revenue per available customer, and then it all became total value of customer. We call it the CRM generation, when CRM became a buzzword and everyone was talking about customer relationship management and how it influences overall impact on pricing, overall impact on how you approach consumers, how you understand consumers, and finally graduating into more value-oriented approach towards pricing. And we've seen that in the last 4 or 5 years as consolidation continues to take place in the hotel industry, how different hotel companies have really put their focus on loyalty and loyalty programs. And today you go on to website of some of the brands and chains and you find members only rates and so on. But that's not limited to the hotel industry alone. Take a look example of Expedia or Booking.com. They have launched very, very strong loyalty programs. Take an example of member-based sites like Luxury Escapes and so on. And they too have a huge focus on a certain base of customers that they want to acquire. And the reason for that is very simple, because acquisition costs in general across the world have increased rapidly. In management science, we call this cost per customer acquisition, or COCA, and we measure it against the lifetime value of a consumer. So the basic premise is that the lifetime value of the customer should progressively increase over time, whereas cost of consumer acquisition decreases. And therefore, it is far more profitable to be able to garner this whole membership base of consumers who use your product with a certain degree of frequency and be able to provide value and benefits which are specifically targeted towards them. And we see a great deal of movement taking place towards that migration. And finally, as pricing moves into more strategic orientation as a strategic tool, we see that today there are techniques like bundling and which are changing value perception. Think about an example of going on an Expedia.com on the Air Plus Hotel package site, where it shows you clearly if you book air and hotel, you save $200 or $300 per night, and that's a huge saving for the consumer. So it's really changing the perception of value, and that has its own implications in terms of how do you price in a multi-channel environment. Do you go channel agnostic, or do you start managing your pricing by channels? And how do you gain enough or ample consumer knowledge to understand their behavior. So a good example is if you go to certain geographies, for example, Russia, people who are trying to pour in a lot of money on search marketing in Russia, actually it doesn't really work very well for most geographies. The reason for that is that the Russian market's behavior still is that they will go to their travel agency and book through that. Japan, which has amongst the highest adoption of internet in the world, in pretty much in line with Taiwan and India and China and US, you will find that even till date in Japan, a lot of travel is actually offline. In fact, 70% of the business in the hospitality world is booked offline. And the reason for that is because consumer laws in Japan are very strong. And if you use an intermediary to make travel arrangements, you can always hold them accountable if something goes wrong. And the Japanese travelers in general, which are very cautious travelers, they find great comfort that they can hold someone responsible in their country if something goes wrong. And these are some of the aspects that one needs to understand when today you're moving through strategic pricing, keeping in mind that they're multidimensional channels and that they are multidimensional geographies which have different preferences of the way they book and the way they consume content across different channels. At this stage, let's take a pause. So we've had a conversation about the demand influencers. We've had a conversation about the evolution of pricing and how pricing has evolved over the past 20 years or so. It may be at different stages of evolution in different markets, depends on their maturity, but we see in a broader context that is how pricing has evolved over the last 20 years. Now, when you put all of these elements together, the one thing that remains constant and one of the most compelling challenges when it comes to demand forecasting and thereby pricing is that there are way too many variables that are involved in the world today. And at this stage, let's take a quick pause, and I'd like to hear from you and your thinking about what factors will really drive change in the future. Because while we've studied the past, we are now planning for the future as to how do we tackle and tame this aspect going forward in the future. So if you could just take a moment and respond to this poll question.
All right, so we have the results coming in for this one, and it looks like, again, everyone is on the same page with all answering technology.
And your answers are no different than what the industry in general says. So Charles Kynes from Cornell did, in collaboration with the HSMAI, Hotel Sales Marketing Association International, came up with a report and basically a study on the future of revenue management. And again, when this question was posed to the broader leadership across the globe, whether it's revenue management or management in hotels in general, the response was the same, that technology is really going to change or have the most influence on the future. And if you see on this particular chart, we've got consumer behavior, we've got competition, we've got internet marketing economy, but there is a clear movement towards technology, and it's not surprising. It's not surprising because as we define what is optimal pricing, it basically hovers around three variables, which seem very simple at the face of it, which is willingness to pay, incremental profit, objectives and constraints that you put around it. And one of the challenges with these three simple variables is that they are broken down into several sub variables. Willingness to pay differs from market, from the context of travel. Incremental profit depends, again, changes from geography to geography depending on your cost structures, and also changes from channel, because each channel has a different distribution cost associated to it, which is variable in nature in most cases. And then objectives and constraints, which is really what kind of constraints and what kind of pricing objectives you've set to optimally drive your demand, where aspects of brand claim to come into being. Would a brand like Four Seasons go down to a floor level as a brand like Holiday Inn, and so on and so forth? So those considerations also play. But one of the biggest constraint is that today pricing is still driven by levels in most of the hotels. So I'm sure you're familiar with different bar levels and defining different bar levels. And it's incredible. I did a survey about a couple of months ago, and the result was 80% of the hoteliers, they did not leverage any technology to determine price values, despite the complexity that we have discussed of demand influences as well as the way pricing has evolved. There are also gaps between pricing levels that lead to lost opportunity. The moment we talk about setting up different best available rate levels and different discount levels, there are always gaps between those levels. And how do you know that a $200 rate would have the same impact as 210 or 215? Because if you're following a manual practice, it's very hard to do price sensitivity and price elasticity analysis. Last but not the least, a hotel industry is not just about selling one room all the time. It's different product types. You've got rooms, you've got club rooms, you've got suites, you've got villas, and so on. But the demand for those product types may not be constant or consistent during different times or different points in time. And therefore, it becomes extremely important that there is some form of technology that is used. And what amazes me is that this is a Nissan AI developed car, which basically is a self-driving car, which is going to be soon in the market in the next 5 years, from what is anticipated. And the world, in terms of its technology aspect, is at this stage. And when you reflect back that 80% of the hoteliers that were surveyed do not leverage any technology, it shows a huge gap between the hospitality industry's appetite to adopt technology at a fast pace as compared to the rest of the sectors around the world. So here's an interesting question for you to respond on is, what tools do you use today to optimize your pricing decisions?
All right, so for these results, it looks like they are tied between revenue management system and basic Excel.
So it's 50-50, which just shows that while there is certain degree of adoption, but stays fairly consistent, that a lot of people are not using any kind of a technology solution to drive their pricing decisions and so on. And this is where the role of econometric models play, and how econometric models have an impact on optimizing your pricing. It's a data-based way to measure key performance drivers. So if you take a look at this illustrative example, you will find that on one parameter, we've got bookings, another promotions, and then you've got the ad spend, because these are the aspects that really, really help drive pricing. Just by putting a pricing on the retail store, it's just not going to sell by itself. You do need to promote it. You need to find the right niche segments to target certain types of price offerings. And then you need to have certain amount of ad spend to promote what you have on your shelf to really get an impact of model. And this is where econometric models come into play. Because these econometric models, they tell us a couple of great insights come out of these, which is they tell us the magnitude of each driver of performance. So the latest econometric theory says that when supply and demand both increase, the quantity will increase, but price may go up or down. And this is a departure from the inverse law of proportion of demand and supply, where it said that, when your price increases, demand falls. When price decreases, demand increases. In the modern day econometric theory, it says also sometimes when price increases, the demand continues to increase. A good example of that is special events period. So I'm a big cricket fan, and right now the World Cup cricket is on, and I'm seeing demand patterns around hotels in UK. And despite the fact that the hotel rooms are expensive, despite the fact that the tickets to these games are super expensive, there is a huge amount of demand. One of the studies shows that how retail around these events really has sold. People have run out of stock of the merchandise that they were selling, and now they're charging a premium to put whatever stock they have remaining. And that is, again, a departure from the law of the inverse proportion of demand and supply. Now, someone may call it that this is an exception to the law, but actually the modern econometric science says that there are conditions when the demand and supply may both go up, but the quantity, while it's increasing, the price can go up and down. And this is what is built into modern day econometric algorithms. These econometric models also allow us to forecast the impact of changes in tactics. And a good example is in a retail store. So, in the retail world, there's a lot of analytics and econometric science and predictive analytics, which is deployed to understand consumer behavior. And there's a very interesting study which said how weather has an influence on the retail revenue. And there are a couple of big companies which actually found out that during certain weather windows, if they were to do strong promotions on their online channel when it was either too cold or storm brewing or one of those more adverse weather conditions in play, they saw that their store demands went down, which is fairly logical. But what they found an opportunity is that the online sales exponentially grew during that period. And what they started doing is they started deploying, they started studying weather forecast and weather pattern, and based on that started deploying promotions in time for to lure certain customer segments to actually shop online. And that is, again, something which comes from econometric science, which basically tells us the impact of changes in tactic as we move forward with that. And this enables us to do a lot of what-if analysis. That means today we can if we are leveraging this technology and this data science piece, we can actually forecast that if we were to put a certain price or certain offering on the shelf in the near future, what is likely to be the impact of that? Is it going to cannibalize our revenue, or is it going to bring in incremental revenue with a certain deviation of cannibalization? But most importantly, these models measure all dimensions. So if you see, it's a three-dimensional model, and there are further variables which are added to it. And typically in a hotel, you will find, whether you're in Middle East, you've got Ramadan period, you've got an ad campaign running, you've got renovation taking place, you've got a renovation taking place at a direct competitor, there's a special event like Olympics, or there's festive season, or there is a period after a special event like post-Labor Day. in the US, whether there is a search engine marketing campaign running, TripAdvisor ratings, and so on. All of these collectively have an influence. And I don't know if you've referred to some of the research reports which have been done by institutions like Harvard and MIT on the impact of TripAdvisor ratings or reputation ratings on your ability to charge a certain price can also have an influence. And all of these different measures as well as dimensions have an influence on the ability to price, the elasticity of pricing, and overall demand. And if we reflect all of these econometric model on how really room revenue management works, and not just room revenue management, but also pricing in food and beverage, it's really processing several variables to optimize a simple profitability. So take a look at the original revenue of a hotel, and then you've got different price barriers, different product types. What you're trying to do is you're trying to increase group pricing, reduce displacement. What you're trying to do is you're trying to optimize your best available rate and thereby promotional rates that are sitting over there. And you're also trying to do it over varying lengths of stays of different types of market segments to really drive optimal pricing, thereby mix on a particular peak day or particular period in time with varying levels of demand. And how do you do it over 365 days a year using something as complex as these econometric models that we've been talking about, which have all of these huge variables and so on. And the reality is that a human mind is unable to process so many variables at the same time. Human mind is, the optimal use known of human mind is 8%. That means we use maximum 8% of our brain. And that too is not ample enough to really process so many different kind of variables. So if you think about forecasting, it's history, market conditions, different segments, looking at forward booking data, consumer metrics, which have an influence on the forecast. And on the other hand, if you think about really leveraging that demand, or whether you're trying to generate demand, how do you optimize your price? There is product, there's customer, channel, time, and price. And these are way too many variables for a human mind to process. And here's the challenge with a very manual way of looking at some of these aspects is the inability to, or the power of leveraging various variables in optimum pricing. So today, think of a situation or scenario where imagine you just define a ceiling and you just define a floor. That is to protect your brand beyond a certain point that you don't want to be perceived as a brand which is too cheap, or you don't want to be perceived as a brand which is really underselling itself. And let's assume that there was a full range of pricing values available across different product types, which is room categories in the case of hotels. If you were to combine all of this and use advanced price analytics, you would be able to leverage not just the analytics to optimize the price in the range, but be able to combine market demand, reputation, competitive pricing, and forecast to really optimize pricing. Pricing decisions will be determined by demand at the product type level and matching that demand to the pricing of the product type rather than just doing it at an overall hotel level. And that has a huge implication as far as your ability to optimally price your hotels is concerned. Not only that, if you were to think about, how do you bring this complexity to the table for people who are not experts in that area, but are truly the management that takes, or the leadership that takes the final decision, how do you influence their behavior? is to really simplify this process. So there is a whole lot of complexity that exists in the background, which runs these different econometric models to help you optimize pricing. But on the other hand, it's really helping and educating others to understand the ingredients that drive a pricing decision, which is competitors' demand, price sensitivity, booking pace, and reputation, and how do you make it simple. And today technology has a great answer, especially with the development of artificial intelligence and machine learning. A lot of products today can simplify the complexity in the background. Here's a good example where you can visually see in a very simple manner why a certain price is optimally recommended. And not only that, it allows you to do what-if analysis to understand, okay, what if I don't agree with what this piece of technology is enabling for me? And I say, hey, my gut feeling still says I could perhaps price higher or I could price lower because there is certain aspects that I understand instinctively which perhaps are not captured by data science. And in such a case, again, an on-the-fly simulation can be done to understand the impact of such a decision. And that's not it. Today, a lot of people ask me a question, so should I be deploying a revenue management software or should I be investing in a data analytics and visualization tool? And one of my responses is there are very two requirements for the two tools. So one is a revenue management system, which is a price optimization tool. So the role of the revenue management system is demand forecasting and be able to optimize the three levers that we spoke about right here, which is really optimizing pricing over a certain length of stay, and being able to give you an optimized price to reduce or minimize your group displacement and optimize your group revenue. And this is the role of the revenue management system, whereas a data analytics and visualization tool gives you insights about market behavior. The tool is not going to tell you that run an advanced purchase rate at a 10% discount. The tool is going to say, okay, I see this price point, which is discounted price point. It's not fitting into my optimization algorithm, so I'm going to shut it off. That's what the tool does. But your ability to reach out to niche geographies, be able to drill down data, and be able to draw insights that help you form informed tactics and strategies for the future comes from a data analytics and visualization tool. So the two tools have a very different purpose, and the art is to combine the power of these two tools. At the end of the day, what we are trying to say is that the world today is far more complex than it has ever been. The way we sell is not as simple as pricing needs and matching it to the kind of price value proposition that we presented, which was the case 20, 25 years ago. Today is far more complex. And if there is no adoption of data science in terms of technology-enabled solutions, then perhaps you're leaving a lot of money on the table and not making full use of the tools and technology that is available to help you optimize. And here's a good example. It's about Citizen M. It's about the use cases of Citizen M. Now, Citizen M is a pretty niche product. It's much more smaller hotels, because another question I'm asked is that, hey, so how do I, as a small hotel, take advantage of that? And that is, technology is available today to everyone, and it's fairly reasonable and cost effective. But here is what Citizen M was trying to achieve, is that they were trying to take advantage of the business and leisure trips, and through their technology and data analytics and visualization tool, they were able to find that 46% of the business travelers adding personal travel days to business travel every trip or to most trips. And they basically started seeing that, so how many days are added, how many percentage add 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and 4 days. So who is the right person that they should be capturing? And this was driven by a report which was done by Skift on Bleisure along with Expedia that I talked about. And this company took notice of this trend of this report and said, okay, now how do we find out what really happens in our case? And they started doing some research with their own data analytics and visualization tools, and they were able to fully understand the extent or the substantial nature of this particular segment and be able to devise tactics to take advantage and be able to optimally price or come up with price value propositions which can drive greater revenue for them. And last but not the least, I wanted to take an example from Remy, who's the Group Vice President for Radisson Hotel Group. And I think what he puts down is very, very apt, and it's refreshing to see more and more leaders talking about the value of data. And in their case, they partnered with Accenture Interactive to support in building advanced intelligence model that starts predicting basically buying behavior patterns, understanding their customers' online journeys, and the way they prefer to book, stay in their hotels, and then connecting all of these pieces to their demand and business models for their hotels worldwide, so they can use these predictive models to drive various initiatives either at a group level or at a hotel level. And that's, in general, we will find more and more leadership groups in the future taking a note of that and moving towards a more data science-driven approach, leveraging technology to really optimize their ability to price better, more intelligently, leveraging the right technologies. And once again, I want to say over here, it's not just about technology. At the end of the day, it's about driving business. And behind all of these technology comes a huge amount of business acumen, knowledge of data science. All technology is helping, is enabling that. And like I mentioned, it's minimizing the complexity, increasing the simplicity. So for people who are not data scientists and for people who are really business strategists, it throws in relevant pieces of information which help you take a much more informed decision towards optimizing your revenues as an outcome of optimized pricing. So that was all I wanted to share on today's webinar, and I do hope you drew some good insights out of this. If you need to reach us and ask any questions, even in the future, the details given over there, my contact details. I'm very, very accessible on email and on WhatsApp, and happy to respond. But thank you for your participating, and I'm happy to take any questions now. Or if you would like to share your thoughts or your experiences, this is the time.
All right, so we do have a question for you coming in. So the first question is, when so much technology is available, why is there a challenge in adopting it?
I think hotel industry in general has been an industry. In fact, not just hotels, but hospitality in general has been an industry which has been more service and guest-centric industry. But only from the psychographic parts that I spoke about. No one was really looking at the behavioral science behind it, and as an outcome of that, the spend on technology has always been less than 2% of the gross operating revenue, or maybe lesser in many hotel cases. And that's a paradigm shift that is required within the industry. That today managing a hotel is not just about providing exemplary service and attention to the guest, but it is equally uh, about managing demand, and not just from a point of view of optimizing when the demand is at peak, but also generating demand. And that is one of the key challenge that has an effect on our ability to adopt technology as quickly as we should as an industry.
All right, great. Thank you. And our next question is, with the extended development in data science, is the role of revenue manager becoming less relevant?
I think recently I was at a summit with SAS, and someone asked the same question, that so with all of this artificial intelligence and management science, is the role of the revenue manager going to become less relevant? And I think the answer lies, if you take a look at the trading world. The traders basically sit in front of a piece of technology that basically is doing all the assessing all the trades, and then throwing up recommendation. To an extent, it's almost a fully automated process. But the traders are still an important part of the puzzle, because they are the ones who are making sense of all of these things and trying to validate whether what is being recommended and what is being deployed actually makes logical sense, and that is something which is really going to drive business for the traders. The same aspect I see as the role played by revenue managers. The only change I see over there is that the competencies for revenue management professionals in the future will very, very different than what have been the competencies in the past. It will require a great degree of business acumen. It will require the analytical abilities that we expect of the revenue management. It will require a lot of entrepreneurial thinking. And that is really being able to come up with out-of-box ideas and strategies and tactics, taking advantage of all of this data and the value it has to offer in terms of insights. So I think that is going to be the huge change in the future.
All right, thank you. And then our other question is, what about hotels who can afford to invest in some of these technologies? What else can they do to help optimize pricing?
So I think the cheapest piece of this technology is available today for $2 per room per month. It's fairly inexpensive. So gone are the days when you needed to think about $100,000 investment to be able to acquire such technology. So whether you're a large hotel or a small hotel, I think as far as technology availability is concerned, and at the price that it's available, it's very, very reasonable today. So the hotels can certainly use this piece of technology. But even for those people who are using Excel-based tools, while Excel offers a great biomedia to be able to analyze a lot of data, time is always a constraint. I mean, how much time are you really willing to spend on drilling down and writing macros to try and understand and decipher data? So I guess it's always a question between time is money versus productive use of time. And if a piece of technology can facilitate and enable that at a very, very cost-effective manner, then that is something that you can do. And today, unlike the past, there's also a huge departure. So initially, technology firms, if you ask them, okay, so if I plug in this form of technology, what is the return on investment I can get? Today, a lot of these firms are able to showcase you use cases, examples, illustrations, and give you confidence on the kind of return of investment you can expect from investing in such cost-effective technology solutions. So I see that even smaller hotel companies, number one, you can afford to invest in such technology. It's available. You don't have to buy a Ferrari, but to start with, you can you can buy a more cost-effective option. And as you derive value from this and showcase that value to your stakeholders, you will be able to garner greater support for further investments in more evolved technology pieces that can help you optimize your pricing.
All right, great. Thank you so much. So that looks like all the questions that we've had come in. So beyond that, do you have any kind of final points to leave everyone with?
So I think finally I would just say or recap the whole presentation in three key aspects. One is demand forecasting is hard today because of the amount of variables at play. And if demand forecasting is hard, then that makes price optimization even harder. And therefore, my recommendation to all of those who are aspiring to achieve a more optimized level of performance is that there is a lot of technology that is available. Study that, get exposure to that, and see what fits in best into your business model and what is cost effective to your business model. But do engage in enabling technology to help you price optimally, because that is really where the future is.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Puneet, for the presentation today. And on behalf of HFTP, thank you everyone so much for joining us today. And so that concludes today's presentation. Thank you, Puneet, again very much. And we hope everyone has a great day.